When you're trying to make these big changes, or you're trying to be the first person in your lineage to do certain things or create a certain reality, and it feels a ton harder for you, it feels like breaking bones and really rewriting an entire narrative that feels true but also wildly unfamiliar and nothing you've ever done before. Just because something is challenging for you doesn't mean you are broken or you're somehow manifesting wrong. You're just manifesting from the patterns that you're currently in. What I really want you to know today is that real manifestation is never going to be instant. Manifestation is not getting reality to obey your fantasies. Manifestation is about becoming congruent enough between your values, your actions, your feelings, your words, your intentions, your actions, how you feel, what you say, your desires, and what you're actually creating. It's not this magical thinking. It's this real, raw, embodied participation, even when it is uncomfortable. Welcome back, guys. Before we dive into today's episode, if you're a woman who keeps finding yourself in painful, confusing, or destabilizing relationship patterns and you're ready to get to the root of those patterns and transform them for good, then jump into the show notes and you can begin with our free resources, including our free relationship mastery quiz and training. So I want to talk about manifestation today, but not in the way that it's usually spoken about. I want to speak about it from an embodied lens, meaning let's take it from concept into what is actually required in physical reality and bridge those two worlds. So manifestation after today becomes something that you're not just kind of understanding on a conceptual or energetic level, but it becomes something a much more tangible, and you understand what maybe some of your blocks are to the creative pathway and bringing things through to physical reality. And also we're going to destigmatize a lot of the kind of shame spirals that can be caused by oversimplifying the manifestation pathway or bringing it into vanity metrics or just discussing vanity metrics in relation to manifestation rather than the true pathway of soul creation, of healing, of transformation, and of bringing something new and different and unique from inspiration through to physical reality when it wasn't something that was modeled to you, wasn't something that got handed down to you. It's something that you were truly creating for the first time. And we're going to go through some of the steps and some of the challenges and also some of the wisdom needed to make that a much easier path for you, when in reality it's not an easy path, it's a challenging path. So most manifestation conversations are far too disembodied. We all know manifestation. We all are innately manifesting at all times. We are creating our reality, we are perceiving our reality, we are interacting with our physical reality. It's not whether or not we are manifesting, it's the depth of what we're manifesting, the fulfillment of what we're manifesting, and whether we're open to receiving the reality that we actually desire versus continuing to create from outdated patterns, old wounding, or things that were handed down to us that just no longer serve us. So a lot of what is out there is it's too just disembodied, it's too passive, or it's too disconnected from the work, the actual work of becoming someone who can live and breathe what she actually desires and the values associated with that. So there is a version of manifestation because anybody can really speak about it. It's not, you can understand it from whatever level of consciousness you're operating inside of. It's not something to be gate kept. It's something we're all working with, but it also is going to be met at the level of level of consciousness and level of understanding of the person speaking the wisdom or sharing that wisdom. And that's going to, where I see a lot of the issues come up is people maybe were born in to a certain level of abundance and therefore that's a normal state. It's very easy for them to create from that state. We all have a baseline of standards that were handed down to us. And so you might be looking to somebody that maybe has more abundance than you, or has something that you don't want, or you do want that you don't have at the moment. And they didn't have to go through a massive healing process or transformation process to bring that into physical reality. Maybe that's easier for them. Maybe that's simpler for them. Maybe their struggles are in different areas, but they can still be speaking about something when they haven't actually walked the path of doing something that was really unfamiliar for them. And so when you're trying to make these big changes, or you're trying to be the first person in your lineage to do certain things or create a certain reality, and it feels a ton harder for you, it feels like breaking bones and really rewriting an entire narrative that feels true, but also wildly unfamiliar and like nothing you've ever done before. What I want to do today is really normalize that process and give you a deeper understanding of the stages and the path involved in that. So rather than comparing your hard to somebody else's easy, you can settle into and accept some of the challenges that are going to come with it, that are eventually going to become embodied and be able to create the life and the outcomes and the desires that you're actually craving. So just because something is challenging for you doesn't mean you are broken or you're somehow manifesting wrong. You're just manifesting from the patterns that you're currently in. Some of those will be doing a great job, and other things you'll want to shift and fine tune and adjust. So let's not go into shame today. Let's not oversimplify this process. And also, let's also include the reality of disembodiment, the reality of dissociation, the reality of trauma, of attachment wounds, relational wounds, and the armoring the body can hold that is what is essentially going to, for lack of a better term, block these manifestations and desires that you have. And that's really what I want to hone in on today. What's actually going on in your physical body, inside of your nervous system, and how you want to work with that so that you can actually start transforming what you're seeing, rather than just spiraling and thinking this isn't for me, or I'm too low frequency, or I'm too broken, or I'm too traumatized, or whatever. Today we're going to look at why you can absolutely create what you desire, but the pathway might be a little bit stickier and clunkier than maybe what people are making it out to be. So what I really want you to know today is that real manifestation is never going to be instant. We do live and usually come to this path from a more scarce embodiment. That's why we would come to teachings around manifestation, because we're desiring more abundance, more peace, more spaciousness, more love. And when we first initially start, quite often when there's a lack of focus or a lack of capacity, and every single person is guilty of this to some degree, is that we feel a bubbling of inspiration, and we very quickly want to take that and manifest it into something in physical reality that becomes our career or something that is profitable. We want to take it from inspiration to physical reality almost instantaneously, way too quickly, not possible. And we're going to talk about that today. So what I really want you to know going into this is that real manifestation isn't instant. If we're bringing something from inspiration into physical reality in a way that is sustainable, there is a process involved in that. And this process that I'm going to teach you today is going to absolutely transform the way you see relationships, the way you build businesses, the way you see why things collapse or don't work, and how you can actually create a secure foundation so that when you are creating something, you feel a lot more confident in that process. And you're also a lot more patient with yourself because of your understanding more about the time that it might take, rather than feeling like you're failing because things haven't happened yet, or they're not happening as quickly as you might like them to. So in saying that, what we're going to go into is how manifestation requires repetition, it requires discomfort, it requires healing, it requires learning, it requires emotional maturity, reality testing, assessing risk, and taking action. So it's not this superficial acquisition, it's not vanity metrics, it is an embodied participation in physical reality. And that's what a lot of people are missing. So manifestation is not getting reality to obey your fantasies whilst you remain fractured from yourself or disconnected from aspects of yourself. It is becoming congruent. Manifestation is about becoming congruent enough between your values, your actions, your feelings, your words, your intentions, your actions, how you feel, what you say, your desires, and what you're actually creating. It's bringing congruency to that, and enough congruency that you can create and sustain what is actually true at a deep, deep level for you. So it's not this magical thinking. It's this real, raw, embodied participation in reality, even when it is uncomfortable. So let's start at the beginning of what the creative path and the manifestation path actually is. So I'm going to give you like a 7-step pathway of understanding how we bring something from a spark of inspiration. I don't like to say that things necessarily begin as thoughts or ideas. I think it begins far, far before a thought or an idea actually emerges. We're just going to talk about it like a spark of inspiration or a spark of creativity. So it's a process. Manifestation is a process of stages. It's not one energetic moment. And the deeper and more true and the deeper that soul calling that is that you're trying to manifest in reality, the more challenges, the more potential setbacks, or just the slower that is going to be. So the first thing, like I spoke about, is the inspiration layer. The first step is that spark of inspiration. Something lands, it's cosmic. We don't know. This is unknown. Something lands in you. It's a desire. It then maybe becomes a vision. It becomes a longing. It becomes an idea. But it's just this natural, cosmic, spontaneous, divine thing that we likely don't have any control over. It's the thing that is the mystery, where what inspires an individual to act or move or operate in a particular way. It's a question that we're always asking. So that is the subtle beginning of any manifestation. So oftentimes we think that our desire or the longing itself is the manifestation process. That encompasses most of it, or that's where it begins. But it begins at inspiration. It then becomes desire as it increases in intensity. And that is just the start of it. That's the very, very beginning of what's to come. So this matters. The inspiration and that desire that comes from inspiration matters because it reveals what is trying to move through us. A lot of us are maybe trying to manifest or create what matters to other people, or what we think will make us important, or what we think is going to get us validation or acceptance or belonging. But your inspiration and your desire that comes from that cosmic conversation between you and the universe and that conscious web of creation initiates you. You essentially, as an ego, don't get to decide what that is. It is moving through you. It's initiating you as you go. The second part after inspiration, and inspiration kind of manifests a bit deeper into a desire, is that you are giving yourself permission. Now, a lot of the times, like I said, we get lost here because maybe you get a spark and then the permission you look for is maybe inside of environments or groups or realities that aren't living a life that you necessarily want to live. They're not, the inspiration can die at this stage because you look for permission inside of spaces that maybe can't give you the permission, haven't walked that path, are going to give you a lack of permission for what it is that you actually want to create. So permission has to come from inside. You have to give yourself permission. I give myself permission to explore this. I give myself permission to move with this, to be curious about this, to take action around this, and also looking for permission in places and spaces and environments and groups that have done more of what you desire to do. So rather than killing your inspiration and desire because you look for permission in the wrong places, start looking for permission, from within, just being able to validate it yourself. I don't need validation outside of me. This is moving through me, and that is important enough. And also, where are the people that are doing more of what I desire to do? So you have to let yourself admit that you want it now. This is when we're carrying trauma or survival patterns. This is where things can get cut off or severed, because to desire something outside of the range or capacity of the people or environment around us, or to desire something just in general that is unique to us, puts us in a vulnerable situation. Exposing any of our authenticity, any of our unique desire is inherently vulnerable. So where there is a lot of protection mechanisms, a lot of unprocessed trauma, where you're still bracing and guarding and maybe even masking to fit in with the people or the places around you, rather than being willing and feeling safe enough to stand out and be unique and be yourself and go after what you want, this is where we tend to shut it down. So this is where you might look for permission in the wrong places or places that want you to shrink, because being bigger than those spaces is vulnerable. And you're not yet ready to put yourself out there, but be aware that that's what you're doing. If you keep shrinking yourself because you're afraid of what it means to admit the truth of what you want and the truth of what's moving through you, and you're not willing to validate that for yourself and give yourself that permission and admit that you want it and follow that through, then you're going to keep feeling victimized around your desires, because you'll keep putting yourself in spaces that you're not willing to stand out from, and you're not willing to be, I guess, as big or as big or desirous as you actually are. So you're going to put somewhat of a lid on that. And this is really, really big. It's really big for everybody. It's big for women, because this is where we start to see, for lack of a better term, the failure at manifestation, because you perceive yourself as wanting too much, but it's always just relative to the environment that you're in and the people you're surrounded by. And that you've never let yourself be vulnerable enough to have desire fully and let that move through your body. And so you can still have your full desires and be associating with people that have not done what you've done. You will outgrow spaces as you continue to move, but a lot of people freak out and think, well, I can't do it here, and I'm surrounded by the wrong people, whatever. That'll make itself known over time. People that minimize what you want, they mock it, they judge it, they intellectualize it, they want you to apologize for it. You naturally, as that desire and trust in yourself and the permission that you give yourself grows, you not only will not be looking for the permission outside of you for it, but those judgments, you'll just distance yourself from them, because it won't feel conducive with the permission and the validation that you are giving yourself, or that you're also getting from people that have grown and changed and evolved and created more of what they truly want. So it's really important to know, in understanding permission, that you can't create clearly from a desire that you are still apologizing for. You might continue to shrink it in little bits along the way. It's part of the path. But overall, you have to own it fully. And that is up to you, something that only you can do. The third step The first being permission, the first being inspiration, the second being permission. Now we're talking about devotion. And once you have the spark, then you've got the permission, because you've got free will. You can do whatever you want, and you've decided that that's true, and I'm going to give myself permission no matter what. Then you have to choose to devote yourself to it. You have to return to it repeatedly. This is what gets missed. And this is what builds abundance, because it's your capacity to sustain devotion over time to something through all of the ebbs and flows and the challenges without blowing it up, withdrawing, shutting it down, just giving up on it. You are choosing to show up through all of the seasons. And that is what builds the character. And this devotion phase, it's just going to go on for as long as it needs to go on for you to build the character and become the person or the frequency that can actually sustain it in physical reality. This is why people that want it all instantaneously, or, we don't go through the process of developing the focus and developing the repetition, then we just get distracted and want to start a new thing and just go through those patterns of wanting things instantaneously. But it is the character building and the devotion and the willingness to show up over and over again in physical reality that is what separates us from the people that don't create anything different. So you don't just choose it once. You don't just choose it when it's that initial spark of inspiration and it still feels exciting. You don't just choose it when it's being validated. And this is where people get stuck in manifesting things that feel surface level or attached to vanity metrics, because it still feels exciting or you're still getting validation. And so they compromise a deeper truth within them because they're looking for the thing that gives them that immediate hit. Whereas manifesting from a soul level and doing something that is bringing something that is deeply true, that is transforming your entire inner and outer reality as you go, is something you're going to have to show up to through many different changing seasons. And that's what builds focus, it builds character, and it also is what allows you to bring something much deeper and much more powerful through, because whilst everybody else is staying distracted, jumping from one thing to the next, which we're all guilty of or have been guilty of, you are continuing just behind the scenes to show up to the same thing again and again in different ways. So you're staying in relationship with the inspiration, with the vision, with the idea. But more importantly than that, which is really, really crucial, and what I really, really want you to know, is that you are staying in relationship and devoted to the person you're becoming through the process. Most people are either oriented to external validation or they're oriented to the physical outcome. And whilst those are important, we're still going to be oriented to those. It's not that we aren't looking for the validation the thing is working in physical reality, or we're not looking to create the thing in physical reality. Those things are still true. But on top of that, you are staying in devotion to the person you are becoming through the process. If you can get that, you can really master any of this. Because whilst then you're not reacting constantly to the things that maybe aren't getting validation, or when something flops, or something doesn't get the accolades or the reception that you were hoping, or something that you tried doesn't work in the way that you wanted, or you're just not seeing the results and you've been going at something for a really long time. All of those things are potential triggers that can cause people to stop or give up. And whilst they can give us feedback on things that maybe need slight tweaking, if you are connected to who you're becoming through the process and you feel like you are building more capacity, more character, more clarity, more willingness to stay with the process, and you're just becoming a better person overall, and you are healing in some way and transforming in some way for the better, if you have an anchoring to that, it'll sustain you through the more and more and more of the challenging times that may come. So that is what will allow you to keep returning when the self-doubt comes up. It's what will allow you to keep showing up and staying the path when the novelty wears off, which is uncommon. And it's also what's going to allow you to let the desire mature instead of using it as a fantasy or cutting it off at the knees and just keeping it at this really surface level thing. So desire becomes creative power when it's met with devotion and the willingness to see something through. And then we get to embodied action. So we've had inspiration, permission, devotion, and embodied action. Now, the first thing I want to say about this is you're not going to know the steps. Hindsight is 20/20. I can tell you things that I've done and how I did them in hindsight, but the pathway of actually figuring out those steps was just a mishmash of collecting information and listening to people that had done somewhat similar things and blending that together whilst, again, staying connected to the inspiration inside of me and weaving those into some spectacular pathway that is completely unique to me and will be completely unique to you, and figuring it out as you go, overcoming a lot of self-doubt, coming up against your own fears, your own visibility blocks, your own childhood traumas and wounding, coming up against the fear of feeling like a failure or feeling awkward or being seen inside of the mess of the process or being exposed or vulnerable in ways that are different or foreign. And people want the steps so desperately so they can avoid all of that. We're all guilty of that. It's like when we get close to a new vulnerable layer and we start to feel like, I don't know how to overcome this hurdle, and it feels scary or it feels vulnerable, or there's this old part of me surfacing, and can somebody just tell me how to do it? Somebody just give me the exact steps, I'll follow it. And then I don't have to negotiate with the parts of me that feel awkward or feel afraid or are fearful of failing in some way. And this is where we often fracture from the process, because to take action whilst staying in relationship with those parts of us that feel shame or fear, that takes emotional maturity. It takes emotional integration. It takes emotional intelligence to understand your inner world whilst taking those actions and taking imperfect actions and being willing to just show up. This is where most people fall off completely, because they don't want to feel stupid. Most people live inside of shame. So they're going to put on a mask. They feel like they're perfecting things. And so they don't transform, or they don't manifest anything or create things that call them to transform or change. So they don't bring that soul level through, because to do that, you have to navigate shame. You have to be willing to alchemize shame into creative power. If you live below that shame layer, you won't bring your soul through, because there's inherently nothing shameful about the soul's expression and what you're here to do. So you have to have the emotional intelligence to navigate the awkwardness, the embarrassment, the being visible, being exposed, all of those things. And if you can do that and develop that emotional maturity, you are above and beyond the vast majority of people. And so a lot of people fracture here because there's a trauma response. Once they feel shame, they start to just fracture. Can I create the thing that still upholds the version of me that I want to be seen as? Doesn't expose me, doesn't make me vulnerable, doesn't make me visible in all of my humanity, but still allows me to uphold this image that I need in order to fit in or survive. So this is where we can go one of two ways. And so because when new inspiration hits, or a desire is made clear within us, or it's just, started to bubble away inside of us, once it starts to enter physical reality, so once it's gone from that emergence of a thought, an inspiration, a desire, and it's starting to come through into physical reality, this is where these teachings are so important, and what a lot of manifestation teachings aren't necessarily holding you through because it stops being conceptual and abstract and something you can kind of hide behind in longing. And every single woman that I know is incredible at planning the thing, visioning it. But when it comes to taking the actionable steps, this is where it sorts out the people that are actually going to do it versus the ones that aren't, because it stops being abstract and it starts asking something of you. It starts asking for you to develop new behaviors, new standards, new skill sets, new choices, new ways of tolerating reality, new ways of speaking, new ways of communicating, new ways of being consistent, new ways of showing up. And this is where it's like, I very clearly see this inside of the women that I work with, and it either becomes something that stays as a concept, stays as a longing, stays as an idea, and they stay beneath that shame layer, or they're willing to get vulnerable and they're willing to be seen and they're willing to do it messy. That sorts everybody out between the ones that just say they want something versus the ones that actually make it a reality. And it pretty much you can just see it. You can see the difference between the different types of people. And I'm not saying if action doesn't feel possible at one stage that it doesn't become possible at a later stage, but we have to be very, very aware of this, because the vast majority of people are sitting on desires and inspiration and ideas that never get brought through to physical reality. We'd live in a very different reality if we were all willing to be much more vulnerable and much more exposed in our process. So creation doesn't end when the vision arrives, and you're not complete just because you can imagine yourself doing it. It starts there. It starts with the imagining, and then it requires the action. The next step is the relationship that you have with resistance. So as you are then going through embodied action, you're going to come up against the shame, the fear, the grief, the doubt, the old identities, the survival patterns, and your protective mechanisms. And it doesn't mean you're off the path. It means that you need to learn to alchemize them into something different. You need to hold their hand and say, let's come with me into this new reality, and I will transform you. We will somehow transform you along the way into something that is more conducive with this new identity and this new reality rather than their old ways of being. So all of the things that are happening inside of you just have an operating system, and you are just now going to awkwardly teach them a new operating system. And that just takes time for them to get on board, and it just takes action and repetition for your body to start to feel comfortable and confident with giving those behaviors or ways of being a new channel and a new way to show up. That just takes time. Again, this requires the emotional maturity. So those things coming up, like we said, is not a sign that you're off the path. It's the sign that you're on a path and it's just uncomfortable, and you're creating a whole new reality, and that you don't know how to do that. And so you're just going to learn, and you're going to listen, and you're going to listen to people that have done things, or listen to wisdom, listen to this, and you're going to put those pieces together as you go, rather than what the majority of people want to do to stay safe in their identity is give me the path. I will tick all of the boxes. I'll get my certificate, and then I'm sorted. But they never took emotional risk. They never were exposed. They never had to become uncomfortably visible. And so that's what's required of the soul's path. Otherwise, you're living somebody else's life. So some examples of this might be that you want visibility, but you feel overwhelmed with feeling exposed. And so you kind of maybe overshare and then withdraw, or you show up and then it becomes inconsistent and it feels like, you're coming and going from it. And that's okay to titrate, but you've got to realize that the visibility is the thing that you're working towards. And that's what it means to carry those fears through. You just have to decide. You've already decided what the desire is. So now that all of those pieces are coming up that are trying to convince you to hide, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? And a lot of people ask me that. They're like, well, how do I break the pattern? I'm like, well, what do you want? Because if it isn't coming from inside of you, why would you break a pattern? If you don't want a different reality, if you haven't done the inspiration and desire and you're not devoted to it, it's like, well, how can you break an old pattern if the new reality isn't actually something you want? A lot of people want to pass over ownership for their desire, but you have to say, this is what I want. You have to claim it. You have to give yourself permission. And once you know what you want, it's much simpler to break patterns because they're going to come up and you're going to say no. Even if you do default into them for a period, you're going to keep realigning with the initial inspiration, the initial desire. And that doesn't go away because that comes from inside of you. So if you're seeking that external, that's the permission that you're looking for. Or you're just not accessing your own desire and you're still doing things that you think other people expect or want from you. And you have to decide if it's something that you want. And I'm not saying that's going to be an overwhelmingly strong desire, clarity that you're going to feel super confident in. It might just feel like this, awkward little murmur of like, yeah, it is what I want, but it feels hard to claim. It feels vulnerable to claim. That's okay. That takes time. It takes confidence. There's a reason why that desire hasn't come through into physical reality and manifested itself in the reality you truly want, because it's vulnerable to claim it. So as long as it's there at some level, then at least it's awake in you. Otherwise, there's nothing to work with. It's the same as you wanting love, but then intimacy feeling terrifying. We're just working with old programming. We're working with old traumas, and that's completely normal. It's not like you're just choosing to operate at a low frequency, and that's why your manifestations haven't come true yet. There's a process involved, and it takes time. So many women think that the resistance means that they should stop, when often it means something old is being asked to transform or alchemize into something new. So that's a really important question to ask. And then the sixth step is capacity building, which we've already kind of touched on. As you do this, you're building capacity. You learn to stay with yourself through the ebbs and flows, through the visibility, through the uncertainty, through the self-doubt, through the discomfort, through the change, through the emotional activation, all of it. And that's when manifestation starts to become embodiment. Because if you are coming up against resistance and you are turning that resistance and into something workable, and you are doing that over and over again, you are building capacity, you are getting very, very close to that then becoming an embodied reality. It becomes capacity first before it becomes second nature. And when it becomes second nature, that's when manifestation occurs. That's why people say, oh, it was effortless. I didn't need it anymore. It's like, yes, because all of the effort you put in for that to become second nature was the journey there. It's like they say it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, but everyone will teach you the 5-step pathway that took them 10 years to master. So manifestation becomes embodiment through capacity building, not because the desire is not because the desire is big. It's because your capacity to hold it becomes bigger than the desire itself. And that's what is kind of in opposition at the start. The desire is too big for the operating system and the traumas that you're carrying and the capacity of your system. And when that starts to reverse and the system starts to feel well and truly big enough to hold the desire, that's when things start to pop. That's when things start to click into place, because you've developed nervous system regulation around the desire. You've been able to emotionally digest it. You've been able to tolerate uncertainty. You've been able to cultivate presence with different parts of you. You've been able to continue through imperfection and the weirdness, and you've let the unfamiliar become survivable, and that brings you out of survival. So the life you want doesn't just require the desire, it requires the capacity for that desire to become neutral. And that's what brings us to step 7, which is when the manifestation becomes stabilized in reality. And that's why we say it's when I didn't need it anymore, or it came in through a back door that I didn't realize I left open, or it just felt effortless, because the thing that once felt like effort became second nature. You built the capacity for it to feel neutral, and that's when things click into place. And so that's what people call manifestation. And what people are trying to do is go from inspiration from step 1 right through to step 7 and skip out all of the middle stuff. And they're like, oh, why didn't it just happen instantly? And everybody said that it all just popped off and it all happened. And, I didn't have to go through all that. You did have to go through that. Look, in hindsight, you would make some tweaks and teach people to do it in a better way. But for you to build the capacity and for you to navigate your patterns and go through that process, that is how it had to happen for it to feel then effortless. Because you're going to have to repeat that process when you want to create the next thing. You're going to be better at it, but you're still going to have to go through the process of building capacity for a desire that is now currently outside of your current capacity. We just get a new desire. We get new inspiration that we have to build capacity around. Will it ever feel as awkward and as hard as the first time? No, because you've got repetition, you've got skill set, and you are learning skill sets that apply in physical reality. And so once you know how to generate income or how to navigate relationships well, it's like you just start to grow on that foundation. But these are all tangible skill sets that you now have that are applicable in every single situation. So things, when you have that foundation, become so much easier. So most people think that the manifestation part is either the inspired thought, just then followed by the immediate outcome. But it's the whole pathway. It's the whole pathway by which something moves from subtle inner reality into stable, lived reality that is regulated. Inspiration isn't enough. Desire without capacity just creates frustration, and vision without repetition stays as fantasy. So the other thing I want to speak about before we close out this episode is how manifestation requires healing. We can't maintain the protection mechanisms, the traumas, the armoring, all of that, whilst manifesting the things that exist outside of that. What I mean by that is if your relational patterns, for example, say your manifestation is true love and a stable and secure relationship. You can't manifest that from inside of the embodiment that was handed down to you if you came from dysfunctional relationship patterns that has created armoring in your body. It's created emotional dysregulation. It's created patterns of withdrawing and contraction. You have to relearn, and you have to de-armor, and you have to open the body and create capacity in the body and the nervous system. Otherwise, this is what we mean by the manifestation remains a longing and a fantasy because it's disconnected from the reality and the embodiment that you currently have. So it's not just about changing frequency. It absolutely is doing that. But to change a frequency, you have to heal the body from the inside out. So a lot of us are going to want to skip all of that because confronting all of those traumas and pains is hard and uncomfortable and confronting. So we're going to want to try and manifest the reality without exposing all of those parts of us. And I totally get it because, even though going through that process is where we gain all of our power, this is where the resistance comes up, and we just wish sometimes that we could just skip over that. But you would never want to. Having done that for myself, you would never want to on the other side, because you realize in all of those places you're avoiding is where all of your power is and all of your freedom is and all of your authenticity is. And you don't want to skip past that and create a life that requires you to keep skipping over those hard things. So if our old programming is a fear of vulnerability, but we want the true love, or our old programming is a fear of being visible and being seen, but we want that relationship or we want visibility, then we're at odds with what we say we want. So we just have to, in digestible chunks, keep leaning into the thing and the desire that we say that we want through those steps we went through the embodied action, through showing up. So we're starting to teach our body a new reality. And the reality of this is that many people, we're not blocked from receiving because the universe is withholding that reality. That reality exists. So we're not blocked from receiving because the universe is withholding all that we want and desire. We are blocked because our embodiment, our body and our nervous system is still organized around protection mechanisms, old, outdated protection mechanisms. So we may want to stay victimized because it's part of the protection mechanism, but everything you want is available. It's just reprogramming your system and healing those aspects of you, which is more than just believing. Believing is part of the initial thought process, but if changing your beliefs doesn't translate into action, if it doesn't translate into more vulnerability or more healing for the body, then it's just, again, a conceptual thing. And this is what I said, this is what differentiates people that actually manifest in physical reality, because they start to take action in physical reality. Big difference between talkers and doers. And I would love for everybody listening to this to be a doer. So manifestation will become distorted when it is used as a way to avoid vulnerability, grief, our emotions, navigating our anger and channeling that well, having relational responsibility and honesty, holding responsibility and power, doing nervous system healing, and really essentially dismantling and alchemizing our old identities. So this is really, really important to know. And also what I want to say about this for women is that a lot of women don't struggle to manifest because they lack desire. All women are generally quite full of desire. They struggle to manifest because they are still building their identity around defenses. So that's really important to understand. So let's close it up today. And so in closing, what I really, really, really want to say on this topic is that if you think it should be instant or you think it's taking longer, then what it in your head should be, you're not off path. It's just going to take you more repetition. It's going to require you to come up against more resistance so you can build bigger capacity. And maybe your soul's journey is to build an enormous capacity to bring something incredibly powerful through to physical reality. So the harder it is for you is often the greatest blessing. If you've seen people maybe do it quicker, either they already had the skill set and it was handed down to them, or they're doing it at a fraction of the depth that you desire to do it at. And that's really, really important to understand. And also inside of manifestation, the core requirement of it is that you are reclaiming all aspects of your humanity. You are finding wholeness inside of it. And through doing that, you are walking an imperfect and awkward path of reclaiming aspects of you that you rejected or fractured from and bringing them to the surface to be seen. You're not burying down all this stuff underneath shame and then manifesting these things from vanity metrics or things that just allow you to uphold a certain image. No, you are transforming everything that you have buried beneath shame, and you are alchemizing that into something that is more aligned with the reality you want to create. That's the manifestation I want for you. That's the embodied wholeness and integration that I want for you, because that's what creates congruency. And then no matter where you are or what you're doing, you've got yourself, you've got your authenticity, and you don't have to fracture from yourself in order to create the life that you want. And this is the root and the depth of all manifestation teachings at their core. It's just they're being hijacked for more surface level things and, more superficial agendas than what we can actually utilize them for. So thanks for being here today, and I can't wait to see you next week.